day, everyone. You're welcome to class. This class is Introduction to Livestock Production and Management. I welcome you to class, and I believe you will have a good time in this class. We will learn a lot about livestock production, what livestock production is all about. Livestock production involves breeding, raising, and managing animals, domesticated animals, farm animals, managing them for food, fiber, and other products. That's what livestock production is all about. And why do we have to do this? Why do we have to and harvest their products? Well, part of the importance of meat on our food. You don't like to eat your food without some form of protein, whether it is chicken, it is beef, it is pork, or something. You would like to have some meat on your food when you eat it. So livestock provides nutrition. Livestock also provides income. You can imagine a livestock farmer can actually make a lot of money by selling either meat products, selling the live animals, or sell products from livestock like eggs, milk, and so on and so forth. So you can get income from livestock production. Another thing that makes livestock production important is the fact that it can provide employment. Through livestock production, you can be gainfully employed. A lot of farmers out there that make a lot of money by simply engaging in producing livestock animals. So those are some of the importance of livestock production. And of course, generates raw materials for some industries. For instance, if you like leather bags, then you know from some animal skin, we call it hides and skin. It comes from livestock production. So, by way of introduction, I'm also still going to talk about the different types of livestock. When we say livestock, what do we mean? We're talking, like I said, about animals that are raised, reared, managed for the products we can get from them. And these animals can be beef cattle. When we say beef cattle, we're talking about cattle that produce meat. And then we have dairy cattle, type of cattle that produce milk. I'm sure we like milk. Okay, so then we have swine. Swine is also another name for pigs. Some of us like pork meat. Yes. So swine, or if you like it, you can call it piggery. That's when you raise pigs, is also a form of types of livestock. Then we have poultry. I know that's very popular. Many people know poultry. In fact, a lot of people engage in poultry keeping, either for the meat or for the eggs. And aside that, we also have small ruminant livestock. By small ruminants, we mean animals like sheep, and those are the types of livestock that you can have. So that's for introduction. Now I'm going to talk about different fields that you can find in livestock production and management. When we talk about livestock production and management, some of the fields that you will find there is breeding and genetics, is a field that deals with selective mating of animals to produce offspring with desired traits. For instance, a farmer might desire to have animals that will give him milk, for instance, and then he selects animals that are good milkers, animals that can produce a lot of milk, both male and female. Now, it's only females that produce milk, but sometimes in choosing, in getting animals that will give you milk, you might want to go back a little to select parents, for the future animals that will give you milk, and then you will mate them to get the female animal that will give you milk. That is what breeding does. It will generate animals that are high milkers. So selective mating of animals to produce offspring That is breeding. When you select animals, male and female, to produce a particular offspring that will now give you some products in high quality, that is breeding. You can breed for improved growth rates. You can breed for fertility. You can breed for meat production. You can also breed for meat quality. So that is breeding and genetics. Now, what does breeding and genetics entail as part of livestock production? Breeding involves having productivity or productive traits in mind, the traits of interest that you want to see in your animals. Traits like fertility, like I said, disease resistance, and the rest of them. In breeding, we also consider breeding systems. How do you make sure that the offspring that is produced can give you good quality products? What type of system do you use in mating your male and female animals? That is what we call breeding systems. And under that, we can have pure breeding, we can have crossbreeding, and we can have inbreeding. Now, this type of breeding is what is practiced when you want to. Inbreeding is a type of breeding you practice when you want to have a trait of interest being multiplied in your animals in its pure form. It's also called pure breeding. Crossbreeding is when you bring two different types of breed together. Maybe you have observed that a particular breed is not very good in a particular trait of interest in your livestock, and then you bring another breed that can be crossed with it to give you the desired result. So that's crossbreeding. It's part of breeding in livestock production. Another thing we do in breeding is to do selection. We select animals as parents of the next generation, parents of the new set of offspring that will now give you the traits you are looking for, your trait of interest. And sometimes in selecting your animals as mates or as parents of the next generation, you want to do genetic testing. You might want to check for their performance using different means. Sometimes you can do different selection processes to ascertain that the animal you are choosing will be able to give you good quality offspring that will give you the kind of product you are looking for. So that's breeding. Now, another aspect of livestock production is nutrition, animal nutrition. In nutrition, we study the dietary needs of our livestock. Aside studying their needs, we also look at the feed composition that is required by specific type of animals. For instance, when you want to raise poultry, definitely you cannot feed them with grass like you will feed cattle, because poultry as birds require different kind of nutrition compared to ruminants, cattle, sheep, and goat. So in animal nutrition, we also look at feed composition, we look at the needs of the animal, we look at how to meet the nutritional requirements of specific animals at different physiological stage. When we say that, what do we mean? When we say physiological stage, we're talking about the different classes that your animals can fall into. For instance, your animal could be a pregnant animal. That's a physiological state. It could be a newborn, of which case you will not feed it the same thing that you will feed a pregnant animal. So animal nutrition or livestock nutrition has to do with meeting nutritional requirements of specific animals. Now, when we talk about nutritional requirements in animal nutrition, we are talking about energy requirement, the protein requirement, the vitamins, and the minerals. There are different feedstuffs or feed types that will produce these nutritional requirements for all the animals that you want to raise. So animal nutrition studies nutritional requirements, and now you can generate the required nutrition for each specific animal from the available feedstuffs. Then we also have feeding systems. In animal nutrition, you also want to look at the different ways through which we feed our animals. For instance, there's something called ad libitum. When we say ad libitum, we're talking about feeding your animals without restriction. You feed them as much as they want to take at every point in time. And that way, they will be able to produce at their maximum level or their optimal level, as the case may be. Then there's something called the restricted form of feeding, in which case you measure, you give in rations, you ration out. Oh, this is the amount of food that this animal will eat within this period of time. It's also a type of feeding system. Then we have open grazing. In case of ruminants, where you allow your animals to graze freely, they eat to their fill and they have whatever they feel they need. Under animal nutrition or livestock nutrition, we also consider nutritional disorders. We want to look into things that can hinder our animals from performing at their best. Some of these nutritional disorders could be malnutrition. That is, if you don't feed your animals well, maybe you are not meeting their nutritional requirements. You are not feeding them enough energy. You're not giving them enough protein. They are not taking enough vitamins. Then they will not be able to produce at their best. So nutritional disorders like malnutrition, metabolic disorders, obesity, and the rest of them are sometimes considered when you consider animal nutrition. Another aspect of livestock production, which is very, very crucial, is the health and disease management. Under health and disease management, we look at practices and strategies that are used to prevent diseases, to diagnose diseases, and control diseases in livestock populations. Definitely, when you keep animals, not one, not two, when you keep them in a herd, that is, in a group, you want to be careful to check their health status. You want to be sure that they are comfortable. You want to be sure that they are at their best in terms of health. And you also want to be sure that if any one of them is sick, you can quickly diagnose what is wrong. So health and disease management is very, very crucial in livestock production. And we also control diseases. There are different strategies for controlling diseases in livestock production. But first, let me talk about the different types of diseases you can have in livestock production. Some diseases can be infectious, which means they can be transmitted from one animal to another. They can be zoonotic. Zoonotic means from animals, it can be transmitted to humans, which means even the person raising the animals can contact some diseases from his animals, and that's very dangerous. For example, the avian influenza, which we call bird flu, is a very, very popular zoonotic disease that can easily cross from animals to humans. Then we have non-infectious diseases. These are type of diseases that are not caused by pathogens, but they are caused by maybe injuries, traumas, maybe not taking care of the animals well, nutritional disorders, things that has to do with management practices on the farm. Those are non-infectious. For instance, if you don't give your animal enough water, it can become dehydrated. It can be dehydrated, it can be stressed, and when an animal is stressed, it can lead to mortality. So those kind of conditions are called non-infectious because it cannot be transmitted to another animal or to humans. Then we have disease control. How do we control diseases in our livestock systems? We control through vaccination. By vaccination, it simply means there's we prepare the animal in case of an infection by giving a form of that infection to the animal ahead of time. Sometimes it is given as an injection, sometimes it is given as drops into their eye, and so on and so forth. That's vaccination. Then we also prevent disease, we control disease in our livestock production systems through sanitation. By keeping your environment clean, you can prevent a lot of breakout of diseases. Then there's something very, very crucial, which is called biosecurity. By biosecurity, we mean putting measures in place such that there's no transference of disease-causing organisms on your farm. For instance, you don't allow strangers to come into your production systems. You keep whoever is working on the farm, they maintain personal hygiene at all times. At all times. Sometimes when they want to interact with the animal, they are required to change and put on some form of overalls. Even there's something we call foot dip, where you put your feet into some chemicals to kill whatever organisms may have followed you from wherever you are coming from entering into the farm, to prevent it from entering into the farm. So that's disease control. Then we have health monitoring. In health monitoring under livestock production, we look for clinical signs that can show to us that the animal is not feeling all right. So you must know what are the signs you look out for to show to you that your animal is not feeling fine. Whether it is restless, it is not feeding well, it is just staying in one place, it's not thrifty, is not, or is panting. Some of those things can be clinical signs that tells you that the health of the animal has been compromised. Then we have laboratory tests that can be carried out, as well as post-mortem examination. When we say post-mortem, we're talking about the fact that if there's any mortality, any of your animal, if any one of them dies, you want to check what is the reason for the death of that animal. Is also a type of health monitoring system in livestock production. Then under health and disease management, we also have treatment options. By treatment, we mean how do you restore your sick animals back to health? You can use antibiotics. Sometimes you use phytobiotics, which are treatments that are not synthetic, that you can get from the natural environment. You can use, and sometimes you don't even use any drug. You just call the animal, you pay attention to it, you give it supportive care, and the animal recovers, and then you return it back to the flock. So those are the ways to maintain health in your farm. Another aspect of livestock production and management is housing and environment. In livestock housing and environment, we deal with structures and facilities that are erected for shelter, protection, and care for our livestock. And under this aspect, we will consider the different housing types. There are different ways to house your animals. Sometimes you confine them in a place. That kind of thing is called intensive system of housing, where the animal is kept within a confinement. The animals are not allowed to freely range or mix with any the outside world. Then that's confinement. Then you also have what we call the free range. The free range is also called the extensive system of housing, where the animals are kept freely and they can move about in the environment, interact with other animals, interact with even people here and there. We find that in our local settings, where chickens and goats and all sorts are kept around the house. That is extensive type of housing. And you can have semi-intensive, in which case the animal is allowed to freely range for some time, but after some time, they are brought back inside into confinement. So they have the two combined together for them. They can range freely and then they can be kept under shelter for a period of time. That's semi-intensive. Then we have under housing and environment, we consider the environmental factors that we have to put into consideration for our livestock to perform at their best. Some of these factors include temperature. If you want to keep livestock, you have to pay attention to temperature. Every livestock species have the temperature range within which they are comfortable and within which they perform at their best. If you want to keep poultry, for instance, there's a temperature that is comfortable for them. If you keep them below that temperature, they can suffer cold stress. And if you keep them above that temperature, they are likely to have heat stress. Either of the two, the animal will not give you the best. Then you also consider humidity. Humidity has to do with the moisture that is available in the air. The higher the moisture, the more the stress on the livestock. So there are humidity ranges also for each category of animals that you may want to keep on your farm. Then we also have ventilation. If you keep a large number of animals within a small confinement and you do not ensure proper ventilation, it can affect their health. Lighting is also one very important aspect of the environmental factors that we consider in housing and environment. There must be adequate lighting for them to eat properly, for them, for instance, if you are keeping laying birds, the amount of lighting will affect their laying patterns. So those are things we consider under environmental factors. Then we consider animal welfare. Animal welfare is also a very crucial aspect of the environment. We look at how to reduce stress on our animals. Animals are like humans too. They like to feel comfortable, and when you are comfortable, you are able to perform well. When your animals are stressed, they will not be able to perform very well. So you must ensure their comfort, and you must also understand that there's a particular way they behave when they are not comfortable. Each species of animals have a particular way they behave when they are not comfortable. For instance, when poultry is kept in a warm environment, if it is too warm, they will start panting. It shows that the environment is no longer conducive. The temperature is too high. So when you see their behavior, you can know their needs. Then finally, under housing and environment, we also look into manure management. How do you manage their waste? Animals will produce waste. And when they produce waste, if you don't tackle the waste with care, if you don't take care of the waste properly, it can breed trouble for them in terms of health. So there must be proper collection of the waste. And if it can still be utilized for something, for instance, poultry dung can be utilized as manure on your farms. Sometimes it can even be processed, for some other. Sometimes some of this manure can be processed for use in other aspects of farming. So that's for that on housing and environment. Then we want to also look at reproduction and fertility. That's also an aspect in livestock production. And this aspect deals with processes and practices that involves in breeding, gestation, and parturition of livestock animals. Okay, those are big terminologies. Gestation simply talks about pregnancy, the pregnant state. You must know their gestation, for instance, stay pregnant before it gives birth to its young. How long does it take for a chicken to lay an egg? That's the gestation. All those things are called gestation period. You may want to look at what is called estrus, in which case you are talking about the heat period, the period that a female animal is receptive to male animal. And these factors can include age, the age of your animals. If you have kept an animal for long on the farm, it may not be as fertile as a younger animal. Nutrition can affect fertility also. If you feed your animal well, especially at reproductive age, it will produce better. Then another factor that can affect fertility is the health status of the animal. And we can also, then genetics also affects the fertility of your animals. What type of animal? What is the genetic component of the animal, the genotype of the animal, what The genes that affect fertility in animals can determine whether they will produce more or less than others. Then under reproductive management, reproduction and fertility, we also have breeding programs. By breeding programs, we're talking about how you mate your animals. What type of system do you use in mating your animals? For instance, you can allow your animals to mate freely, random mating, where you just put the male and the females together. Once the females are on it and they are ready to receive the males, they just cross like that. That's natural service. No involvement of any human, no control. However, you can also have a form of control on the mating of your animals. If you want to do commercial livestock production, you definitely cannot depend on natural service. So the other types of breeding programs can be artificial insemination, in which case you will collect spermatozoa from the male animal, and then when the female animal is on it, the spermatozoa is introduced into the female animal, and then you can ensure that the animal gets pregnant faster and better than what obtains in natural and random mating. Then we also have something that we call embryo transfer. Embryo transfer simply talks about harvesting. Okay, let me just combine it. You can do multiple ovulation and embryo transfer. Multiple ovulation is you induce the female animal to produce more than one egg, produce a lot of eggs, and then the animal would be mated artificially, and the embryo, the growing embryo, can now be transferred, and either raised in vitro, in which case you can raise them artificially, or you can even transfer into a non-pregnant animal as a surrogate. So those are the kinds of breeding programs you can have. Then we also have pregnancy diagnosis. As in livestock production, we also have clinical signs we look out for to be sure our animals are pregnant, and so on and so forth, so that we can ensure proper breeding. Meat and dairy production. Yes, this involves processing of livestock products for food, like milk, like meat. And for meat production, animals that can give you meat, beef, you can get beef from cattle, get pork from pigs, get lamb meat, or mutton can be gotten from sheep. You can get poultry meat or chicken meat from poultry. For dairy production, under dairy production, you can have milk, which is the direct product, and sometimes milk can be turned to cheese, butter, or yogurt. Now, under meat and dairy production, one of the aspects we also consider carefully is quality control. You see, in livestock production, we don't just harvest our product and leave them. There must be a way to process and to preserve. So under quality control, you want to look at how to package, how to store your livestock products. And because livestock products, when they are not properly stored, after some time they will deteriorate, they can spoil. There's also something called grading of our products, such that you will know whether it is of high quality grade or low quality grade. Then there are different marketing strategies for livestock products. And but I won't go into details of that. Now, there are different things you can, like I said, different aspects of livestock production. I've talked about meat and dairy. We can have poultry production, in which case you can raise your live birds, live chicken, live turkey, geese, fowl, guinea fowl, and so on and so forth. You can have layers. Layer system is a system where the birds are raised for eggs. Then under poultry production, you can also have breeding. Sometimes a poultry farmer can decide that I'm not raising my birds for eggs or even for meat. I'm raising them as parent stock where other farmers can come and buy from me and then develop their production lines. That kind of poultry farm is called a brooder farm or a breeding farm. Um, okay, let me stop there for poultry production. Sheep and goat production also involves breeding programs, different breeding programs. Like I talked earlier, you can have pure breeding, you can have crossbreeding, you can have outbreeding. All these breeding programs have to do with what you are looking for. Then, under sheep and goat production, you have to consider their nutrition. Sheep and goat are ruminants and they basically feed on grasses. So you want to consider whether you want to ranch your animals or you want to allow them to freely move about, like the Fulani men move their animals to places where they can find grasses from time to time. So that's feeding strategies and their nutrition. Then health and disease management. Finally, I want to talk about livestock economics. There's no way we can talk about production and management without talking about the economic aspect. Because as a farmer, you want to look at making money from your livestock uh, business. And if you're a scientist, you also want to look at how to help people that are in production to make more money and to get better products. So, livestock economics looks into financial planning of your livestock enterprise. You have to budget, you will cost, and you will find a way of doing the right pricing for your animal products. In budgeting, you look at the cost of securing the animals, the cost of feeding the animals, the cost of housing the animals, and the cost of their health management. So all of those things we have to go into budgeting, costing, and costing. When we talk about pricing, there must be a way for you to know the animals are produced, the eggs are produced, this is the amount that I can sell and make profit. So pricing also comes into play. Under livestock economics, we also look at marketing strategies, the local, the national, and the international strategies for marketing livestock products. You must be able to add value. If you harvest your animals from the farm and you process them further, you may be able to export them out of the country to other nations. And all this will determine the value that your livestock products will bring back to you. Then we also have risk management, insurance, diversification of your livestock systems. For instance, some do mixed kind of system where they don't just raise one type of animals. For instance, you can raise poultry and pigs, such that some of the poultry waste or some of the things that cannot be adequately utilized by your poultry can be fed to your pigs. So you might want to diversify and so on and so forth. And then record keeping is also an aspect of livestock economics that is very, very crucial. If you don't keep records, you cannot follow the trajectory of growth of your production system. You must be able to know the stock that you brought in, how many animals did you bring in, what was their fertility rate, how many years have your fund been established, what is the profit and loss of your farm enterprise. All that you can achieve through record keeping. So you must have production record, the financial record, the health record, the birth record, even the record of your mating, the mating of your animals. When was this animal mated? When did it give birth? And so on and so forth. When is it likely going to be available again for mating, so that you will be able to have maximum production on your farm. So that is that for livestock economics. And then finally, I want to talk about sustainable livestock production. You see, livestock production is very, very interesting, very dynamic. However, if you do not have a system to sustain your production, you may not be able to do continuous production over a period of time and continue to have productive animals on your farm. So what are the aspects that we consider under sustainable livestock production? How to keep your production, livestock production and management ongoing over a period of time. One, you want to look at the environmental impact of your production system, of your livestock production. Are you polluting the environment? If the environment is getting polluted, you may not be able to sustain the production. Climate change, of course, some of us, or most of us, are familiar with the change that is taking place in our climate because of human activities, green gas emissions into the atmosphere, causing global warming. So climate change is making a lot of impact on our environment and is negatively impacting on livestock production system. So if we want to have sustainable livestock production, climate change is something to seriously consider. Then we also look into resource depletion. How do you maintain the resources that you have on the farm, your pens and so on and so forth, such that you can keep producing year in, year out? Then another side to sustainable livestock production is social responsibility by considering animal welfare, effect, impact of whatever you are doing on the environment and the community you are living in. Some people will do poultry and their neighbors will not be able to, have fresh air again because they are raising poultry in the community. So all those things are things you have to look into if you want to have sustainable livestock production. You also want to consider economic viability, the profitability of your livestock production and management system, the efficiency and the competitiveness of your livestock production system. If there are so many people going into the type of production that you want to go into, so many people raising poultry now, it might affect the pricing of your products when you are finished raising them. Finally, on sustainable livestock production, I'll talk about innovative technologies that can be brought into livestock production and management. Some of it includes precision agriculture. In precision agriculture or precision livestock farming, you use certain sensors or certain technological gadgets to set up your farm in such a way that what the animal needs is given to each animal as at when due. Animals are given their normal water intake. There are sensors that are attached to the animals, and they can, those sensors can pick the nutrient requirement, the specific requirement of each animal, and provide that precisely to the animal. Then another thing in innovative technology in livestock production is biotechnology. In biotechnology, you apply biotechnological systems, or let's put it this way, you use principles of genetics, and some work in the laboratory can be applied into livestock production. Some results that are gotten from the lab can give us a picture of what we need to do better on our farm. So that's the use of biotechnology in as an innovative technology to develop a sustainable livestock production. Then, so in summary, livestock production and management has to do with the systems, the practices, the different aspects of that is involved in breeding, raising, and managing animals for food and other products. I hope that you have gotten a lot from the class, and you can say a lot of things now about livestock production and management, the different aspects of livestock production and how we manage our animals. So, on this note, I'm going to say thank you for listening. Thank you for coming to class, and do have a pleasant rest of the day.